Hello, see this strangely shaped ruin? It is part of the most complex of all Cyclopean works in Greece. Not only in the way the stones were fit to one another in advanced Cyclopean fashion, but also for its planned usage as a shipyard. Furthermore, the boat factory location, midland away from the sea, reveals an unexpected biological advantage of the Cyclopean builders. One trait, sort of genetic, that enabled the local Cyclopean builders to fine tune their art and extend their presence. Greece is a major hub for Cyclopean works, having them walls in nearly all of the land, plus islands, built in numbers and variety that for long have been awing curious minds and annoying experts, unable to make sense of the existing stock of odd-shaped stones fit to one another ranging from crude works atop forgotten hills, as in the fertile plains of Thessaly, to the sophisticated stonework akin to a sculpture that we aren't sure how they were made, such as those to be found in Elion, plus everything else in between. The scope and diversity of Greek Cyclopean walls has motivated the laziest among the paper pushers to retreat into the nonsensical mainstream idea that building Cyclopean works was meaningless, like a pottery design, a temporary fad that required no particular skill. Alternatively, if you follow this channel for a bit longer than today, you'll be aware of a big secret echoing from the deep past. And if you don't, please fix it because you are missing big time. It's like this. The Cyclopean builders, the people building Cyclopean walls throughout the south of Europe, from Portugal to Georgia, during the Bronze Age, were an ancient lost culture, known by many names, such as the Iberos, Nuragic, or in Greece, the Pelasgian. These cultures, or family of cultures to be more precise, are recognizable by several characteristics beyond their impressive stone construction skills, including other traits such as a group of lost languages unrelated to the existing we speak today, particular burial practices, some quirky hats, frenzied fortune tellers, and last but not least, as we'll see today, a sort of biological or genetic superpower that enabled them to build Cyclopean walls for longer. The shipyard we are investigating today, together with the very elegant polygonal walls around it, is but one in a string of similar exceptional Cyclopean constructions scattered in the region of western Greece. A bunch of walls that are younger and have a very distinctive feel versus all the other Cyclopean works in the continent. For once, they are of a more complex architectural plan than average, making up buildings and usages far beyond the conventional walls and towers common elsewhere. That case is best illustrated by Cassiope, with its theatre and also this, let's say, one-eye motel, all built in fine polygonal style. Also unique is the labyrinth in the Necromantion, that combines a confusing floor plan with elements of creepy ancient religious practices. There's this little islet on the Ambracian Gulf that we have no idea what was made for, nor the name of the place, offering some charming views at sunset, provided one survives the insects. Top of it all, the monumental stonework in Elea combines humongous blocks with complex shaping in a cliff-facing wall. And finally, the previously mentioned shipyard, carved on the bedrock, several kilometers inland in the ancient city of Oiniades, raising the big question of why were they building boats so far away from the sea. The Cyclopean builders, the people building Cyclopean walls, had their peak as a culture around the Bronze Age, about the time when the Hittite and the Mycenaean walls were built, implying the south of Europe would have large populations skilled in odd-shaped stonework. Then, over the following years, Cyclopean construction would progressively lose preference. At the same time, the lands were being overwhelmed by some incoming brutes of Indo-European extraction, i.e., people speaking a language of the family we overwhelmingly use today. The damning effect the Indo-European speakers had over the Cyclopean builders' cultures can be summarized in two unrelated phases. One, in the past, there was a 1,000 years period of population replacement, with the new incoming Indo-Europeans gradually imposing on the older Cyclopean cultures. Then too, in the present, we observe the total annihilation of the Cyclopean memory under the guise of pseudoscientific ideologies entrenched in universities. Whatever the process, the reality is that by the Iron Age the vast majority of Cyclopean cultures had been absorbed and the construction style had moved on to cheaper and sad squared blocks with mortar. Except in Western Greece, that not only continued to build with intricate fitted stones, that skill was applied to varied buildings plans, and not only on walls, leading us to think these cities are likely younger than the average Cyclopean wall elsewhere in Greece. The main reason to consider these Western Greek cities to be younger than the Bronze Age and other Cyclopean walls is the absence of reference to any of them in the catalogue of ships, an extensive list of places contributing with boats to the Trojan War, which is problematic, especially in the case of Oiniades, like this. According to Homer, the Hellens were amalgamating all the boats they could grab to go off and fight the Trojans. So, how could the exceptional shipyard in Oiniades escape contributing with vessels? In contrast, during the Peloponnesian War in the 400s BC, Athenians and Spartans fought over the control of the place, just because it was producing large numbers of triremes, the battleships of the day. Then again, in 31 BC, the Roman Emperor Augustus sank Cleopatra's fleet in nearby Actium, but by then Oiniades was no longer contributing with boats and was abandoned right after. This sequence of events, whereas Oiniades' its absence in the War of Troy, becomes a big deal during the War of the Peloponnese and ends up irrelevant again when the Roman Empire was around, lead us to conclude the Cyclopean cities in western Greece were in fact younger than the other Cyclopean walls. That is, the Western Greek Cyclopean walls were built not in 1500 BC like Mycenae, but around 500 BC, roughly a thousand years later, in a time when elsewhere the Cyclopean builders were basically extinct. It is said God created the world, but the Dutch did the Netherlands, in reference to the large amount of new land reclaimed from the sea, using dikes, not one-eyed. If that same saying had a classical version, would justifiably go like this: Gaia was hurt, and the one-eyed giant did her, as illustrated by the Battle of Thermopylae. Many people would be familiar with the tale of how only 300 Spartan soldiers standing in a narrow pass protected Greece from the invasion by the not naked Persian emperor, plus the world's largest army. Exaggerated as all epic movies are, what is surprisingly even bigger than said is the land bridge where the Persians were blocked. The path to cross from central to southern Greece in Thermopylae is not narrow at all. It is in fact huge, has a highway plus a rail track. No way 300 people alone could block that. Unless the flatland was not there back then, which in retrospect was just the case. Thermopylae went from being a narrow pass into a wide plain due in part to the efforts of the ancient Greeks, who drained lakes, carved riverbeds, created seawalls, all combined with the continuous silting by rivers, extending the land and ultimately reducing the importance of the Cyclopean builders. Most of the fine polygonal walls in western Greece are now to be found on top of hills, surrounded by flat plains. But back in their heyday, they would be almost like islands, surrounded by wetlands, until, bit by bit, the land dried in a process that also left the shipyard of Oeniads stranded inland. Now, I'll say all those mostly gone swamps enabled the late constructions of the sophisticated Cyclopean walls due to a natural superpower the Cyclopeans had developed: malaria resistance. This is a bit of speculation on my behalf, but if the original Cyclopean builders were native to the south of Europe, they would have, at least in pockets, developed some tolerance to malaria, whilst the incoming population of Indo-Europeans arriving from the cooler northeast would not be apt at dealing with the fevers and deadly mosquitoes to be found in the hot swampy lands like western Greece. That much would be enough to enable the Cyclopean builders in malaria-infested areas to remain relevant for longer, maintaining a larger population skilled in chopping stones in odd shapes right until classical times. This effect of Cyclopean builders persisting for longer in malaria-infested areas goes beyond Greece. If we make a list of the European areas where malaria was endemic in classical times and also the places with Cyclopean walls, we will find a curious overlap. Many regions with swampy waters and seasonal fevers are also where we can find hubs of Cyclopean builders, sometimes resisting for longer, well past the end of the Bronze Age. That is notably the case of the flatlands of Campidano in Sardinia, where local Nuragic Cyclopean culture resisted later than any other Cyclopean builders we are aware of. Or in Spain, where the Romans complained of the fevers in Tarraco, one of the most impressive Cyclopean cities around. And also in Baetica or Seville, where the likely Cyclopean culture of the Tartessos left their mark. According to the Greek Anti-Malaria League, the disease was a recurrent problem in Western Greece right until the 20th century, implying that in pre-classical times the original populations of Cyclopean builders could remain a big part of the workforce, thus explaining the late sophistication of the Cyclopean works in that region. Here's the thing. The Cyclopean hilltops of western Greece were once surrounded by swampy areas, infested with deadly mosquitoes. The resulting malaria outbreaks would make these lands unwelcoming for the Indo-European invaders, who, coming in from the cooler northeast of Europe, had not developed immunity. As a result, the native population of western Greece could remain relevant for longer, compared with the East. The result was the latest and most impressive Cyclopean works, with the technique being applied well into the Iron Age, in exquisite buildings such as the Shipyard, Theatre, Crazy Death Temple, and even the One-Eye Motel. Whereas everywhere else, the Cyclops and their walls disappeared earlier, during the Bronze Age collapse, under the attack by dragons, as we'll see next. That's it for today. Hope you liked it. See you in the comments.